Tennis podcast.
Blog Talk Radio.
Let me try that again. Welcome, everybody. This is Nextgen Tennis Podcast. This is Growing the Game, Episode 1, Start Where You Are. And with me today is Bill Patton. Bill Patton has been in the industry for over 30 years. He is a USPTA Elite Pro, PTR, and MTN professional. He is a co-founder of USA Tennis Coach, and he's a part of the Catalyst SEC group. Bill, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing quite well, Mike. And how are you doing?
I perked up a little bit.
That's good. That's important.
That's good. So, anyway, this is episode 1 of Growing the Game, and we talk back and forth about different ways that tennis providers can grow the game of tennis. And one of the things that you put down and we've talked about was start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. You want to elaborate a little bit about that, Bill?
Well, first off, I first heard that quote because it was attributed to Arthur Ashe. And then later I discovered that actually it's a quote. He was quoting someone else who came much earlier. And I think Teddy Roosevelt may have said that, and he may have been quoting someone else himself. But it's a great quote, and Arthur Ashe was a great ambassador for tennis, maybe one of the best ever. So yeah, I mean, really, this is something that's just true about life. If we're going to be successful at anything, we always start where we are. We always have to use what we have. And we always have to do what we can. If you think about what's the opposite of those things, people try to start in a different place and they try to use things that they don't have, and they don't always do all they do. I mean, so it is good advice because it's very grounding. And as I was preparing for talking with you, I was thinking, wow, am I going to try to be inspirational to anybody out there? And I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm going to try to just be really practical and say, hey, here are some things to do. I'm not going to try to rally the troops and get people fired up, but I want to give tools to people and have them get to work tonight and tomorrow and this week, get to work on some stuff.
Well, that's good because I think I had enough motivation yesterday from Ray Lewis's Hall of Fame speech.
Are you presuming watching that stuff?
It's Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis. Some of it was cringeworthy, right?
It was quite good. He put on a microphone and he worked the stage very well. It was good. So
all right. So, no inspirational stuff from me. If you get the inspiration because of the talk, that's fine. I'm not trying for that. Anyway, go.
So where are you? So that was one of the bullet points you discussed is you have to know where you are, and if it's in your career, if it's your geographic location, you have to know yourself personally. What do you want to elaborate on that, Bill?
I think first, I mentioned that I wanted to talk about the tennis summit that was a few years ago, and I think it's a good time to talk about that because I think where we need to know where we are, as a sport, and we're in a little bit different place than we were when the summit was happening. But this was a meeting that was held in Indian Wells for 2 years in a row, and the TIA put it on. And I thought there were a lot of really good things about it. But the one thing that seemed to be missing was action. And another thing that really made me frustrated, and I expressed this in the meeting, because there were about 400 or 500 industry leaders there from various segments of the tennis industry. And the thing that I found the most disturbing was the overarching theme of tennis having a second-class citizenship complex. And so I spoke up and said, hey, why are we acting like we have to beg people to play our sport? We have the best sport in the world. People should be begging to play this game, and we should actually be giving them the message that, hey, this is kind of a big challenge. Are you sure you're up to it? It's a far more attractive message than all of this sort of dumbing down of the game that we try to do to make it easier for people to play. And I think we wreck ourselves that way. If you think about when you were a teenager, who could never get a date? It was the person who was kind of desperate. So anyway, as I was going on, 3/4 of the crowd turned around to see who is this idiot. And so that's something to me that's interesting, is that as leaders, we need to be the first ones who really love our sport and show that love to other people, and then they're just amazingly attracted to the game. So I think that's one thing that's a kind of a where we are. We're in a place of feeling like, oh no, we're losing. Pickleball is taking over. How do we stop that? And we have to go, no, wait a minute. Tennis is a much better game than pickleball. There's nothing wrong with pickleball. I would play. But, what we can do is we can say, all right, pickleball is getting popular. How do we look at why it's popular, use that in tennis, and then use pickleball as a way for people playing?
I think that's great. I think that's the direction that we need to go and talk about as tennis providers. I didn't say tennis coaches or tennis professionals. I said tennis providers, because we're the ones that are providing the opportunities to play tennis for the players. And I think that the blame game gets played a lot, and everyone starts pointing the fingers at this person and this person at that organization as to why the tennis isn't growing. But really, when it comes down to it, you need the boots on the ground to push the sport and make it appealing. And so in the worldwide, 1.2 billion people play tennis. And
really?
The U.S., 1.2 billion people play tennis in the world as of 2012. And only 200,000 people play pickleball.
Okay. Well, yeah, in my area, it's really funny. People, I mentioned that the fact that we may be converting 2 of our courts to be dual-use tennis and pickleball, and most of the people I meet say, "What's pickleball?" So this these feelings of panic over that are kind of amazing to me. But now, if we go back to, where are you? I think you made a great point. Playing the blame game is exactly the wrong thing to do. So if that's where you are, if in the audience, if you are in the place of placing the blame for the growth of the game not happening on someone else, then you really need to look in the mirror and say, no, if it's to be, it's up to you. If it's to be, it's up to me. We were talking in the pre-show about if we take the first habit of highly effective people, which is be proactive, that's what we need to do. Be proactive. Make it happen. Be the person who attracts more people into the game.
So that's strength and weaknesses right there. And I think that a lot of people like to have a fixed mindset when it comes to tennis growth. And that's all we can do. That's all it's going to be. And that's what it is. And we just can't change it. If we have a growth mindset of looking ways outside of the box to attract people to play tennis, I think that is a better kind of MO to have just because there's not a lot of, I mean, tennis has been around for hundreds of years, so you can only do so much. There's only so much new stuff you can do with tennis. I mean, you can put it in a new box, you can package it up and make it look real pretty, put a bow on it, shine it up, put some wax on it, but tennis is tennis. And you may have these other niche sports come in like pickleball or paddle tennis or whatever else, but I'm going to start to get worried when the first high school association adopts pickleball as a varsity sport.
Well, and so there are a couple things from that. Okay, one, high school tennis is the sleeping giant of player development in tennis, right? And so I'm glad you said that, because just in the last couple of days, I've kind of started this thing of, blasting out on social media to people to go out of their way to do one tangible thing for high school tennis in their area, whether it's donating some balls, encouraging a coach, putting on a free clinic, dropping by and, just watching the kids play for 5 or 10 minutes, praise somebody. I mean, whatever it is, just do one tangible thing for the high school tennis in your area, and that will have a pretty major effect if we can get people doing that kind of thing. And or even going to the coach and saying, what can I do for you? Or if the coach reaches out to the tennis community and says, hey, I need a little help with blank, and just, ask for help with one thing. That one little's the biggest difference. And so if we stop and we say, okay, where am I in my career? Here I am. This is my situation. I'm an assistant pro at a club, right? So what can I do with my director of tennis to grow the game? And now, or if I'm a high school coach, or if I'm a, college coach, or an independent pro, the most important thing that we need to be doing is taking care of the people that we currently have. And there was a time when I got the message from an organization that I don't want to name, that there was supposed to be this professional detachment, that a real tennis pro kind of like, doesn't enter into a really close relationship with their players. But I really think that whoever came up with that was a major mistake. And I do exactly the opposite. I've never tried to establish any professional detachment. It's just not my nature. So what I do is I really try to be fully engaged with my players as much as I possibly can. I mean, not everybody's going to like you, but doing the very best job of serving every person that walks in that door, steps on that court, and as even-handedly as possible. Then what happens is you show your professionalism that way. You take incredibly good care of people, and they will talk about it. Parents will brag about you to other parents. People who are gossiping about tennis pros and tennis programs will hear that you're not as bad as that other guy down the street. So because what are the stats? The stats are something like anybody who has a bad experience is going to tell 8.5 people. And then somebody who has a good experience will tell something like 3 people. So it's really, if we take really good care of people, then they're not going to tell 8.5 people. And
well,
so then
that's great. So for every one good thing or for every one bad thing you do, you have to do 3 good things or affect 3 people very, very, very well to make up for that one bad thing that you did.
Thought about it that way, but you know what? I'm going to say if you do one bad thing, you better do 20 really good things because you don't want it to be 50-50. Yeah, but the ratios would be about right, that if you do one bad thing, then you're going to have to do at least 3 things to even that out. And they would have to be noticeable, phraseable things. There's a phrase that I adopted in 2010, customer astonishment. When you astonish people, then they will stop shopping. When you give satisfactory service, then that's awesome, good for you. But your people will now start shopping for another place that gives satisfactory service for a lower price. So when you're in the business of astonishing people, then they will keep coming, and they will come more and more. And then you'll get those referrals. See, then probably the number one most effective thing is you can get to the point where you ask for referrals and your students give them. Then all the other work becomes a lot easier. So some of you are already there and you might not know it. And so I will challenge you with this week. Go to your students and say, hey, do you ever talk with your friends about playing tennis? Do you know anybody who might be interested in starting? Do you know someone who stopped and maybe they got injured or burned out or frustrated or what have you, and you think they might come back to the game? And you ask them that question, now their mind is activated to start looking for that. But if you don't ask, then they're not thinking that way. They think that you're just perfectly content with all the students you currently have.
So one thing that you said earlier is knowing your place, and as far as if you're a director, a head pro, an assistant pro. And one thing I wanted to comment on that is, depending on your location and who you're working with or working for, there may be a lot of directors that if you're an assistant pro, you bring an idea to them and they will throw it aside. And quite frankly, that's probably the person that if you want to get involved and you want to do things with and you can't because someone is telling you no, you probably need to look for a new job, because that place is not going to grow. And I'm being honest, this is from self-experience. You need to look for a place that's willing to grow tennis with you. And I know just from my own experience, there are clubs out there that aren't interested, country clubs that are not interested in growing the game of tennis and just having tennis as an amenity for its members. And that's the type of thoughts and conversations that you need to have when you interview, because if you want to be a game changer, you have to go someplace that's going to allow you to change the ideas. And it's like that, like turning a barge. It's not going to be all at one time like a jet ski. It's going to take a while to make that turn. And I think it's really important that you can get into a situation that's not going to bring you down. It's going to let your ideas flourish. It's going to, the people and the members that you have at your club and your facility are going to allow you to grow and bring more people into the game.
Absolutely. Now, and so it's funny because just today I was watching this thing. I try to get some learning every day, and today I was watching a social media mogul type saying, don't try to portray yourself as living this perfect life, because then people will just think of you as a phony. So, this is where I have to kind of cop to the fact that there have been places I've failed. I've been at clubs where I wasn't a good fit. Been at that club that you were talking about that they just don't want to grow. I'm currently at a club that thought that they didn't want to grow for a long, long time. And in the 105-year history of the club now, I have the largest program anybody can remember. And I don't think I'll ever be working 20 hours a week at this club throughout the entire year. But it's kind of amazing. I mean, I started last year with one student for 1 hour a week, and it took me a couple of weeks to get it to 2. And then by the end of I think I had 5 or 6 students on a regular basis. But now we're having clinics and we have people getting together for social play, and people are joining this country club because of tennis, which is really shocking. And now they've decided to put a limit on the social membership level because they don't want it to intrude too much on the golf. So but it's been hard sledding getting that going. But what do? I'm there at the club. I'm saying hi to people. I attend events. I say, hi, I'm the tennis pro, and my social anxiety is kicking in the whole time. But you gotta be out there. You gotta press the flesh and say hello and say who you are and make the first move. I think, and then, this is, I think, is challenging to some of those people who have the notion, and there are a lot of them, that, I only want to work with the best kids, or, I only work with 4.0 and above. I'm a high performance coach, but that's a pretty small percentage of the people, and somebody had to get them to that level for you to receive them. So that's a little bit of a problem. And Vic Braden said famously, if there are no 4-5s at your club, it's your fault. So
I like that.
It's really vital that everybody, all hands on board, get a brand new player to play tennis. Even if you think you're frosting on excrement, you get out there and make that happen. I mean, it's too much. It's too much to think that you're only going to work with the elite people, and there isn't enough business there to keep you busy anyway. And those people want their lessons because they think they're too valuable themselves. So.
And I think there's a lot to be said that the people that want to only work with the elite players, okay, so why do they only want to work with the elite players? Is it because that's the pros and that's the coaches that get the highlights? I think we need to do a little more promotion of those coaches and those pros that are really good in the development, that are really good in the 10 and under, that are really good in that 11 to 14, getting the players there and promote them and let them say what they've done to get their programs to where they are so they can even have a high performance program. I think there's a lot of stress on, well, I work with this player and this player and this player, or I'm working with this pro player. Okay, so that's great, but how do you get the 11, 12, 13-year-old to that level? And I was actually at the Florida Division Convention, and there was a great presentation, and it was about how it was this coach, I'm not going to mention any names, but he happened to play on the Pro Tour one time and worked with Jack Sock this past winter. And part of his story was how he went from coaching Jack Sock at the O2. The next day, he was at his club where he wasn't the director. He was a teaching pro at this club working with his ladies team the very next day after coaching Jack Sock at the O2. And I think that the versatility of pros needs to be expounded upon and promoted, that we're just not pigeonholed that we're only junior pros or we're only junior coaches, but we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. As a tennis professional, you need to be able to wear 15 different hats. And if you can't, then that's something that you need to look upon yourself as a strength or a weakness and change that for yourself. So if you find somewhere that's lacking, so when you go through and you make your strengths and weaknesses list, okay, I'm strong in junior development, I'm strong in coaching elite players. Okay, well, what are your weaknesses? Are your weaknesses coaching 10 and under, or are your weaknesses coaching, 65-year-old ladies teams? Well, if that's where your weaknesses are, that's where you need to go to. That's where you need to get your education, and that's where you need to put yourself on that next level to try to grow yourself to make yourself a more well-rounded pro, because people are going to come to you because you can do this, but it needs to be promoted that we can do all these different things.
Yeah, I can't sign off on what you just said because I don't have interest myself in being a completely well-rounded pro anymore. I just hired somebody to come and do the 4 to 6 year olds because frankly I just don't have the patience for them anymore, because I've already raised my own kids and I'm kind of tired of 5-year-olds talking back to me and acting squirrely. So I get somebody a little bit younger to do that because they have a lot more patience and they're more fun and they're not a smelly old coach that's a big jerk. So you have to have some balance there. People bring different skill sets just naturally. So I say, be as rounded as you can be, but don't fight it and don't try to be everything to everyone. But the big problem we have, though, is we have too many preening wide receivers and we don't have enough offensive linemen. I mean, we have a lot of people who think of themselves as iron chefs, but we don't have enough farmers. So for a long time, I've kind of felt like I was a farmer and that I'm plowing and I'm putting seeds in, and I'm watering them, and it takes time, but got to keep plowing and going through that and starting from the beginning, and then in time you've got some players and they come together and then they grow together. So it's vital. So I think that we kind of covered the where do you start? You start with yourself. You start with being the person that does the work and be that offensive lineman, be that farmer.
So, and going to the next part, it's what do you have? And we've kind of covered a little bit of that. We touched a little bit on that as a place to coach, what your current situation is, your current clients, develop relationships, general and special skills. Do you want to talk a little bit about those first 4 and then really get into the fifth one of enough knowledge to write an ebook? Because I know that's one of your specialties there.
Well, I think I think earlier in my career I didn't want to get pigeonholed as being like a specialist in one thing, and it's always kind of bothered me when somebody said, "Oh, you're like a real serve specialist," and I'm like, "Well, actually, I can teach any stroke, pretty darn well." So, I've one of my players who I really liked a lot, and he performed very, very well for me on some championship teams, told me that he thought I was the most well-rounded coach that he'd been to, that there were other coaches that might be better at coaching a forehand or a serve or whatever, but that I had more of a complete package. So, but even so, what I try to do is look at what's not being delivered. People were talking about how, you can't come to the net anymore. And so I was like, no, this is an interesting problem because really, actually, you can come to the net. So I worked pretty hard to develop a program that would teach coaches how to get their players to the net. So that's one of my sort of signature things. And my players are good at the net. I really enjoy watching them play. In fact, I would coach my high school girls, and I would say, if you come to the net some, I'll watch your match. But if you're just going to have 45-shot rallies, then I just can't pay attention that long. So you'll lose my attention. I'll come back when the rally's over.
I like that.
Because I just don't have time for all this moonballing, and it's there's nothing to coach there. Just hit it higher, So, then I created another one on the two-handed backhand stuff because Yandel did his thing, and I thought that was awesome, and I think it was also underappreciated. Even though it's part of the USTA player development parameters. And so I went and I spent about 5 years really, really experimenting with how to teach it. And then that became something. And I think it's fascinating to me how much people want to argue with me on that. They want to argue with me about it, but they don't want to know what it is. So this points, I think, also to a destructive mindset that is in a lot of coaches, is sort of this know-it-all thing that we have, instead of, wow, hey, that's something different I haven't heard about. I'm curious to know what it is. I'll decide later whether I like it or not. Instead of, well, since I know everything about a backhand, because I have the greatest two-handed backhand there ever was, I don't have to listen to anything anyone else says. So know what your tools are. I mean, and study up. I would say, yes, this is a good idea to be well-rounded and be able to teach every stroke. But if you have a particular specialty, then play to that. And also your personality. Okay, I think the main point about that bullet point though was your personality. Okay, I mean, everybody's different. You're different than me. Then you're different than me, and Aaron Wong is different than me, and so is Brianna, who works for me. So you bring certain traits in your personality, right? I mean, I'm pretty intense, and I'm a lot of fun and kind of crazy, and some people like that. And Brianna is pretty serious, but she also has this warmth to her that the kids really like. And Aaron is really quiet, but those quiet kids really like him. So that the who you are, the what are your personal strengths as a person, that attracts certain other kinds of people. That's what you need to major in too.
So on one of these bullet points, it was, and I really wanted to talk to you about this, so I wanted to leave some time on this, is enough knowledge to write an ebook.
Okay, yeah, let's cover that. Okay, so here's a little fun fact. People don't realize that the minimum number of words that you need to have an ebook on Amazon is 2,400. 2,400 words. So that is a 10-page college essay, which I hope anybody who calls themselves a tennis professional can write a 10-page essay. So what you do is you write about something you know. And then what you could do is you could even write about your program. You could write an ebook about, here at Countryside, we believe in this and this and this and this, right? And here's our program laid out, and 10-page essay, and they can buy the ebook, and then you become a published author. It's a really interesting thing that happens to you after you become an author. In other people's minds, you become this different person. It's really fascinating. So I haven't really changed much. I mean, I think I've become a little bit better because of it. I've been more open to being criticized by people. That's been a lot of fun. But the really interesting thing is what it does to transform you in other people's minds. And I'll never forget the first time I was asked to sign a book. It was a surreal moment. And I think it was in Florida. I think it was when I met you, and I was signing books, and I was like, I can't believe I'm here doing this. People want my signature. I mean, and I was always my penmanship was always my worst, and people made fun of me and my horrible writing, and now they want my signature. So anyone really can write an ebook, and it's not that hard to do. And if anybody wants to contact me offline on how to get this done, I can help you with it. I would love to do that. I think it's a great way to grow the game, because then when you become, Mike Baugh author, then you can probably charge $10 more an hour for your lessons now because you're an author. Then if that means that you can have a longer, better coaching career. I think another problem in the game is that, a lot of coaches can't afford to keep coaching because coaching's not really that well paid. So having another little, another little piece of income that comes in, even if it's a trickle, then that's a good thing. But it's the prestige of being an author that will also help your career in other ways.
It will definitely open up some doors as far as speaking engagements and getting out in front of other people and helping your resume also, especially when you try to go into a new chapter in your life as far as a new job or try to take over somewhere else, that if you can put that on your resume, on your CV, that you've done this, this, and this, I think that it just helps build that resume up.
If I go interview for a high school coaching job, I give a copy of The Art of Coaching High School Tennis to the athletic director and the principal. You don't think I'm going to get hired?
I mean, if you wrote the book, then they should hire you.
So that's what it becomes. And again, it's in people's mind. Oh, he wrote the book. I mean, it's not the book, but it's a book. Some people have called it the book, and I feel really honored by that. But there are other books, and maybe there might be one that's better. I don't know. But it does feel good to have people saying that. And when you have something tangible that you can put in front of people, that's an important thing. And this goes back to back when I was podcasting a lot, I interviewed Matt Cronin, and Matt's great. Matt is really a terrific journalist, and I really love reading his stuff. And he said that he thought that there weren't enough tennis journalists, that tennis journalism is a big part of growing the game. And I would agree with that because as a kid, I used to read Inside Tennis Magazine, which was for a long time our NorCal magazine, and now it's gone to all of California, and I think people read it around the country. But Inside Tennis is an amazing magazine, really insightful articles, and I mean, it just really drives the tennis fan. I used to read Tennis Magazine cover to cover, and then when I was done, I would feel sad and empty. Couldn't wait for the next month to come. So, that's another element. I mean, that really it helps feed that fandom of tennis because that's part of developing love for the sport.
So the next thing you have on here is tech savvy. And I think that kind of goes into the whole marketing, knowing what you're able to do, because let's not kid ourselves. This is 2018. And if you're dealing with trying to grow the game for, say, juniors, you're dealing with parents now that are in their 30s, mid-30s and early 40s now, that the first thing they do before they even go to a restaurant is they jump on Yelp or they jump on Google and they read the reviews for 45 minutes before they pick some place to eat. And one thing that you have to be is out there. You have to have a presence online. And I don't know how many pros I've talked to. I'll go back and Google them to find out, one, if they're full of anything, and two, are they legit in what they're doing? And I know I've actually have called you a couple times on some pros that were kind of up in your area at some time that I met and I talked to, and I just like, hey, Bill, do you know this guy? Like, what do you think about him? Because they didn't have an online presence. And this was only a couple years ago, and I thought in 2016, if you didn't have an online presence, that was kind of odd. That was kind of like a red flag. Like, what are you hiding? Like, why aren't you putting yourself out there? And you want to talk a little bit about the online presence that you've created? And
well, okay. First off, that's like a pet peeve of mine when people say it's 2018. Like, oh, you're supposed to be doing something by now, But Anyway.
Well, it's not 2002 where everyone's got a MySpace account.
Yeah. Hey, I was sending emails in 1995, baby. So I emailed my team in 1995 from AOL. Anyway, so all right. Well, I mean, tech savvy is a myriad of things, and I think we'll gloss on this one a little bit, but then as we go forward in future episodes, we'll dig a little deeper. But you need apps on your phone that transfer money. That's really helpful. Some of your clients are really going to love to use Venmo and PayPal and get you the money now, whammo, and they don't have to hand you a check or cash. That makes things feel better. It's easier for them to just go boop, 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 and then it's there. You need video analysis software on your phone, right? I mean, even something simple. I'm not going to promo any of them, but they're out there. You can find them. Once I get a sponsorship deal with one of them, then I'll start doing some promo. I mean, there's one of the teaching organizations now has one. So that's important. You need that. And then, yeah, you need Yelp listing for sure. And the moment you start it, you need to get your most loyal clients to do a review right away so they start you out with some 5 stars. That there's a little double-edged sword on that one. One time I got into it with a coach who was running a tournament, and the kids were cheating, and then they blamed my kid for being the cheater, even though she was playing her first tournament. And then the next day I got a 1-star review on Yelp. So I had to follow up with Yelp on that because the people were being vindictive towards me over this on-court issue. But I got the 1-star review removed. But absolutely, Yelp and, but here's a little quick tip that can help a lot of people. Fiverr.com, and look for people who can get you listed on Google listings and Apple Maps and all this, and just list your name as a tennis professional at the address of your club with your club's permission, of course, right? But I've gotten a lot of clients from that, and then people, as they're driving by, then they're driving through that neighborhood, and all of a sudden you show up on the map, and then they go, oh, tennis. I mean, so you can get a client from that. But then also, if they can't find you, then then it's easier for them to find you through the maps. Just there are a lot of little things that you can do with technology to make things easier and to be more discoverable and have better SEO. And yeah, I think definitely everyone needs a website, and that's where you really need to see Sports Pros Connect. Mark Wylam is amazing. And yes, this is brought to you by sportsprosconnect.com. So get in touch with Mark. I mean, I think the reason why I would send people to Mark is because he really truly loves the game and really wants to make a go of it, and he's in it for the long term, and also his thing gets you connected in sports in general. So you have the opportunity actually to get people who are browsing through numerous sports to try to find something, and they may choose tennis. So that's an important thing. Yeah, absolutely. You need a website, and probably you don't want to spend a lot of money on your website. So anybody who's interested in that, I can direct you to a video that Mark and I did on the whole Sports Pro Connect program.
Well, and also I think it's very important. If you do have a website, it's current. It's updated with your programming. So if you have listings for your program and they're going to change from fall to spring to summer, you change your website when your programs change. And because if you go on some websites, you'll see that they haven't been updated in 4 years. Well, is this guy even still teaching tennis anymore?
Right, asleep at the switch. Right, you better stay on top of that stuff for sure.
And if it's to the point where you have a position at a club and you're unable to have your self-promotion website or your website for your own business, then you may need to just turn it down, disable that option, talk to your provider and see if that's an option. That way you're not putting out information that's irrelevant anymore.
Yeah. I try not to put information on my website that's going to be outdated. So, I try to keep it pretty static and just say, I have a list of things that are available, contact me to find out what's the schedule for this season.
So on the next part, we want to cover what can you do, and we've talked a little bit briefly on this. So ask for referrals, hang banners, ads on Craigslist. Is that still a thing, the ads on Craigslist?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's kind of a regional thing, I think, because Craigslist originated here in the Bay Area, and I find it really effective. I get a lead from Craigslist at least once a month, and a high percentage of those people I close the deal for less. So absolutely, it kind of depends on your area and how often do people use that. But if Craigslist doesn't work for you, then there are other things. There are other new neighborhood-friendly website, things coming up. There's Alignable. There's what's this other one that I'm doing right now? They don't really allow advertising. You have to pay for the advertising, but there are neighborhood things. Like another thing you can do is if you have a weekly newspaper in your town, those are great. Because I'll tell you what, if you get an ad next to the recipes and your ad is directed towards mom, then mom, the social director, is looking at that, and you'll get a lot of hits from that. So when I've spent money on print advertising, it's almost always in the little weekly that comes out that they throw on your front porch that you end up sticking in the recycle bin. But
so going back to this Craigslist thing real quick, when I first moved to Florida and I'm trying to gain business and everything about 7 years ago, I did post an ad on Craigslist, and I got some hits. I got some calls, said, okay, I'll come over and do a lesson for you, blah, 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 blah. And they either were no-shows, they were sketch, or the best one I had was, and I went along with it for a long time, I got the scam email trying to pay me more, like thousands of dollars more than what the lesson package was going to be, so I can pay the child's driver because they were unable to drive. So that's all. Like you got to weed those ones out.
You get some spam and you get some scams, but there are real people, and my experience in this area at least is that they've been some of the smartest people. So and then you also have mylessons.com and playyourcourt.com, which are nice if you're building a clientele because they pay the advertising, and then you just pay them back a little something out of each lesson, so that you're not putting up Google Ads money with the idea that you might not make anything. So you only are paying for the advertising after you've received something from it. And then
I like Play Your Court a lot if you have open times, like not just 2 or 3 hours a week. I'm talking about if you have a good 20 hours a week of open time, you can be flexible, and you're trying to build your clientele, then that way you can service those people buying those packages?
I mean, those kept me going when I was having a little bit of a dry patch because I was at this club, where there was very little happening, So absolutely you want to, find every little free little thing that you can do. Now, one thing that's been really effective for me is banners. I'll go buy 4 or 5 3x5 banners where it just says something really simple, tennis lessons, and then my phone number really big so that people driving by can see the number. I see a lot of banners that are way too detailed, way too colorful. A lot of times I'll just get a blue banner with white letters, tennis lessons, my number, and then, put those on a fence on an abandoned field next to a high traffic area, and then just wait for somebody to tear it down later. But, that's been one of the most effective things I've ever done. You can go get 100 flyers made and take them to every sandwich shop, every haircut place, every cafe, every place that people spend their disposable income in your town, and get a flyer in the window. Pizza parlors, go where sports teams would go to have their year-end party or whatever. And then you'll get these disenfranchised athletes from other sports that are sick of whatever it is they're playing. And then they'll go, oh, maybe I'll try tennis next.
So after banners, and you have on here your hashtag, your place, that kind of goes into that whole tech savvy. And then the next one is make your peeps internet famous. Definitely need to use hashtags. Definitely need hashtags. If you don't know how to use hashtags, Google it, watch a couple YouTube videos. Don't know what to tell you about that. If you don't know what a hashtag is, then I'm sorry.
Don't hurt people's feelings, Mike. So, no, just in the short of it, when you do Twitter, you want to use one hashtag because it functions like an and statement. So, use the name of your town or the name of your club or neighborhood or whatever, hashtag, and then when people are searching for that, then they will find your tweets. With Instagram, it's or statement, so you want to use at least 11 hashtags, and then you just think of every possible thing you want to be associated with in your area. I use hashtag Oakland a lot, and I'm getting a lot more hits from people around town because my club is in Oakland. You can use the names of other surrounding cities if that's geographically desirable for you on Instagram. Now it's really advantageous, and then you can use @. You can use the @ symbol and hit up your local USTA regional or sectional, whoever it is, district, state, and see if you can get them to retweet your stuff a little bit on Twitter or repost on Instagram. That can be really powerful.
So the next one you have is donate used equipment to schools. How's that going?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. In fact, I just wrapped up, about 500 balls to go take to elementary schools in my neighborhood, close to the club. And so, I called the school and said, hey, you want these tennis balls? The only thing is I want you to put a thank you in the newsletter. That's all. Just for the price of a thank you in the newsletter. Oh, we got a donation of 100 tennis balls to put under the chairs, under the feet of chairs to protect the floors in the school, so that the wax job on the floor doesn't get mangled immediately. Or maybe they'll use it for a PE class or for little stress balls, or to give away to the secretary's dog or who knows what. Pet owners. But yeah, I mean, that gets you some mileage. And then, you'll get, look also and let them know that when their school is having fundraisers for whatever, that you'll donate a lesson or a kid's racket, for their fundraiser. And the hilarious thing is that I get the free advertising, and then like 80% of the time the people don't even take the lessons that they paid for. But my name gets mentioned at their event, and I'm, it makes me look altruistic, and that's always a positive.
So the next one is flyers at every disposable income spot in town. And for those people that don't know what a disposable income spot is, you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's where people buy their coffee, and get their for a sandwich and whatnot, where, the places people go to have fun. That's, it's pretty much it. Because, people presumably have the money for those things, and if they do, then they have the money to also take tennis lessons. You're not going to get a lot of people to take tennis lessons who are really financially strapped, so you don't want to put your flyers at the DMV, for instance, or I don't know, or at the check cashing place. Put it at the check cashing place.
So what you're saying is, if they can pay $6 for a chai latte with a couple extra pumps of whatever, they can afford $60 for a private lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
A couple other ones here, and then we're going to wrap up here. We're closing in on the hour, so we won't waste your time anymore. Hopefully, I've got some notes that I'm going to start doing, and this is a great conversation with you, Bill, so far, is donate lessons and beginner rackets to school fundraisers. And I think we just talked about that a little bit. But what about the lesson package for your first package, you buy 5 lessons, get the 6th one free, different things like that, 20% off if you buy 3 or 4 or 5 lessons up front. Have you done anything like that?
I used to do that stuff, and I think that you have to be careful there, because I know that people offer a free lesson, but I don't do that anymore because it attracts the wrong people. It attracts people who want stuff for free, and then when you try to sell them on, okay, you need to. Are you going to continue with lessons? Then you find out that they only came for the freebie and they're not really going to continue. So I think really the job is to astonish them in the first lesson. Give them a tremendous first lesson. And then, your reviews on Yelp will be really strong. Have a tremendous track record and believe in your value. If you don't believe in your own value, then it's really tough to sell other people on that. That's an interesting thing. And when you price yourself, it's generally good. You either want to be the lowest price or the pretty close to the highest price that you can possibly muster, because people will perceive that you're as good as your price. And so, now that I've been doing this for 30 years, I try to be at the very highest in my market. No one's lessons are more expensive than mine within about a 10-mile radius in a very densely populated area. So that gets me lessons. And then I get people who call me and they say that's too expensive, and they go to the $40 an hour guy, and then they come back and they say, yeah, we shouldn't have wasted our time with the $40 an hour guy. And then now they're happy.
So how can, and I'll just ask you now, going off a little off script now, is if you're a pro and you're, say that you are the 40 an hour guy and you're listening in and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start charging 60 just because it's going to make me that much better. in perception. There's perception and there's reality. What's some things that set the $60 and $80 an hour pro apart from that $40 an hour pro that they can use to promote without sounding like they're being pompous or arrogant about what they can do, without over-promising and under-delivering?
Oh boy, well, this one's spring-loaded. This is like second mouse gets the cheese question. Okay, well, first off, don't be afraid of sounding arrogant. If you're good, you're good. Be good. Sell goodness, and just do your very best for people. I mean, teach them, learn as fast as you possibly can. That's where honing your craft as a coach is really important. Don't be a know-it-all. Always be learning, and deliver great lessons, and then you have nothing to worry about. I wouldn't recommend increasing prices by 50%, because from 40 to 60 is a 50% jump, so that's big. But there's really interesting data that shows that if you increase your prices by 15%, 15, that you will lose 3% of your clientele. So that's pretty interesting. And I did that one time. I went from $55 to $65 an hour. And only one student said, no, I'm not going to continue. And lo and behold, who were they? My biggest troublemakers. And I was really amazed at how my clientele at that time just went seamlessly with the change. I think they had been feeling like they were getting a bargain before that, so they understood. So yeah, 15% increase in prices, 3% loss of clientele, which means you'll have room to get new clients at the higher rate. One way you can manage that is you can grandfather people in. So what I do is, if I'm changing my rates, then I tell my current clients that they're locked into the same rate until the end of the year, but all new business will pay the new rate. So this is a fun conversation to have. I go to the people and I say, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm raising my rates effective immediately, but it won't affect you until 2019. Oh, right. So anyway, that's how I handle that. But yeah, I mean, kind of not fear being seen as arrogant. And I know that's people are, I think, sometimes more humble than they need to be. Still there?
Yeah, I'm just listening. I'm getting the knowledge. I'm getting the knowledge. So you've got your used car salesman, and then you've got the people that don't want to just say what they've done, and they're very humble upon themselves, but they give the best lessons. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing I do is I tell them 100% of my clients rally in the first lesson. And I've put this out recently, and then what do I get back? What do you mean by rallying? I'm like, rallying, the ball goes back and forth, right? What's with the attitude? You can drop the attitude anytime. I get 100% of my students rallying in every lesson, and they makes them happy. And then we may even rally from the service line. And it makes them very, they feel a sense of accomplishment in that first lesson. It's so vital to growing the game, is making them successful at some level in the first lesson. And then building it out from there, and then teaching maybe a little bit more technique. But they've got to rally immediately. It's very doable. And if anybody wants a lesson on how to get their people to rally in the first lesson, I'll be glad to help you. And then there's, I think of people like Kenda Hart, who's so great at that. and Oscar Wagner's good at that. And I think there are lots of different coaches out there who have this kind of this rally first mentality, which is very helpful.
I think that's very helpful for the beginner clients, to get them started into the game, to actually make them feel like that they can practice, and then they have a fundamental base that they can expand upon. I think that's great that if we can get people just hitting the ball back and forth, because if you look at the other sports that are doing well, like the pickleball and the other, that's what it is mostly, is just a rally. There's not really a big serve or anything like that. If you look at ping pong, you're just hitting the ball back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I think that if we can get the beginners into that ability to hit the ball back and forth with each other, then they're going to be able to practice. Then they can come to us once a week, and then they have something to build upon.
And that leads to, I think, probably the number one thing that will get people hooked on the game and will grow the game is the first time somebody hits the ball dead center in their strings and hits an almost perfect shot, and then they're hooked. You get them to hit a couple of balls in the middle of their strings, and they go, wow, that's one thing tennis offers that no other sport has, is this just nirvana-like feeling of a great, great shot in the middle of strings.
And their face lights up, their eyes get the size of pancakes, and it's just like, what did I just do? I want to do this over and over and over again, and then you've got them hooked.
Yep. Get them addicted.
So, Bill, great stuff tonight. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. So if you have any questions, Bill and I think, are two of the most successful people on the planet. So please drop us a line, let us know, and tune back in for our next show. You want to do this again? When do you want to do this again, Bill?
In a week, I think. In a week, because it's a vital time to get people grow in the game. And we'll next show, how about this? How about if we talk about how to capitalize on your summer into fall?
Sounds great. So join us here, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, on the Nextgen Tennis Podcast, where we're going to do Growing the Game Episode 2. Bill, it was a pleasure to have you on tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I'm glad you did this. And, we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you very much for listening.